Thanks for joining me for another 3 for 3 of your child's IEP. So in this edition, we're going to talk about goals. So the IEP goals. And like I talked about in the other segment about the present level, your present level is what drives the need for the goals that are chosen on your child's IEP. Generally speaking, I find most IEPs have between 8 and 12, which could be a little much, but that's usually about the number of goals that I see on an IEP. And you have 4 sections of a child's IEP for younger kids, and then it switches up a little bit for kids who are older, from 14-year-old and up. That's when you move into something called a transition IEP. So there's a saying that goals should be SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym and it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, results oriented, and time bound. And yes, good goals should be all of those things, but I'm going to break goals down into the 3 things that I think are the most important. The number one thing that I look for in goals on an IEP is that it's not the same goal as it was the year before and the year before and the year before. So many times when I get a draft, because you guys should be getting a draft of child's IEP before the IEP meeting. So when I get the draft, I pull out last year's IEP and I'm looking to see, is this a new goal for this child? Is it exactly the same? Has it been changed a little bit to make it a little bit more challenging? Or has it been changed to make it easier to attain? And so big red flags should be going up if that's the case for you. Um, your child is supposed to make progress every single year that they're in school. No matter who they are, no matter what their needs are, your child should be making progress in school. That's why you send them to school. So you want to make sure that your goals are becoming more rigorous, not less. And if they're becoming less, then you need to ask the question, why? What are we doing for my child to help them attain their goals? Are we looking at their strengths? Are we teaching to their strengths? Or are we just focused on their deficits? And that tends to become a recipe for disaster because if you're not teaching a child in the way that they learn, you're probably going to be stuck in the hamster's wheel that you find yourself in year after year after year. Okay, so goals should change every year, just like your present level should change every year. Your child should not be the same kid this year as they were last year. So, number 2 tip for goals is that all goals should be written at 80% mastery, 80% accuracy, 4 out of 5. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to put it in there, but it should be achieving that goal, that skill, at an 80% level, because 80%, if we could do something 80% of the time, that means we're pretty good. We've pretty much got it figured out. We know what we're doing. Not that we always do it. That's why it's at 80% and not 100. Now, if you have a goal on your child's IEP to cross the street, that kind of goal should be 100%. So there are some goals, you have to just think about them to make sense that they be 100%, they be 80%, but no goal on your child's IEP should be less than 80%. And it should be written in such a way that the teacher, any teacher, can document it, can implement it, and know, did your child master this goal? Because remember, your goals are good for a year, a calendar year, not a school year. So you could be having, which most of you would be having, a change of teacher. So the teacher who's writing your goal is not going to be the teacher who's mastering it in a year's time. So you want to write it in such a way that no matter who has your child, they would be able to read that goal and know, what am I measuring? What am I looking for? What am I looking for this child to do so that I can check that box and say, mastered. Um, it's never the intention for a goal to be written and not mastered. So you always have to be looking at the goal to see, is enough information in the goal? Do we have given visual supports, given extra adult assistance, given a token economy system? So many of our kids need to have a reward in order to work towards a goal. And that's fine. We go to work, we get paid. So kids, no different. They want to know what it is that they get. They may not be intrinsically motivated to get that A or that B. They might not really care. So we want to make sure that those types of strategies and supports are built into the goal so that the teacher knows, the student knows what it is that they're attempting to achieve in a year's time. And number 3 for my top 3 in goals is that it be meaningful. Sometimes when I see a student who might be 14, 15 years old and they're still working on letter sounds, that kind of tells me, a couple things, but one of the things it tells me is that maybe this child doesn't learn that way. Maybe they're not going to be that type of reader. Maybe they're a whole word kid. Maybe that's how they're going to read. If they recognize signs out in the community and they know what the sign says because they've seen it and they know what it means because there's meaning behind it. So, for instance, I don't know, Target, Walmart, a supermarket in your area. If they can identify those words, they know what those words mean because they go to those places. They know that they go into that grocery store and they get a cookie at the bakery. So they understand all of that. So you want to make sure that what your child is working on or towards is meaningful to them. So for kids who are working on reading comprehension, and the goal might be for them to read an on-level text, and you know that they're 2 to 3 grades below grade level when it comes to comprehension. You might want to start looking at goals where comprehension is something that they can follow, something they could do, like reading instructions and knowing what to do. Being able to put things together, recipes, things like that, especially for those kids who have met the exemption criteria from remaining on regular standards. You really want to make learning functional, meaningful, so that when they graduate from school, they have life skills so that they can go forth and obtain employment. A lot of times I think that we focus so much on the academic skills and we forget about those skills that really are going to make them employable. And goals related to behavior are so important because when it comes down to it, if we're 22 years old and we're going for a job, the boss really isn't going to ask us how we did in our reading and writing and our math. They're going to ask questions like, can you do a skill? Can you remain on task? Can you clock in and clock out at the right times? Are you invested in making my business run? And can you interact with your coworkers on my job site and work collaboratively with others? Those are going to be the important things when it comes to employability skills. So again, the top 3 things that I think that you need to watch for in goals is number 1, that they're not the same goals year after year after year. Number 2, that they be at 80% mastery and that every teacher, no matter who they are, can implement that goal and know if it's been mastered or not. And number 3, that the goal is meaningful to the child, meaningful to the outcome of that calendar year of the IEP, and meaningful in life. Okay, so those are just my top 3 tips, but certainly the SMART method to writing IEP goals will really help you guys into writing the goals that your child should and could have as part of their IEP. And in the next 3 for 3, I'm going to be talking about services, how services are determined. Okay, so have a good one and we'll see you next time.